Hi, Jonathan York, Bay Financial Partners, looking at investment markets. It's really full steam ahead again in the US with the election. Now the President Trump has been released from hospital and now has finally tested negative for 2 days consecutively for COVID. Now clearly he has quite a bit of ground to make up because in most of the polls he is substantially behind. Most noticeably in the sort of swing states. So in Florida, Joe Biden received a little bit of a boost after the initial debate, was up around 2 points. And again, a further little boost as well in Arizona, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. These are all sort of key states that President Trump won in 2016 and really has to win again if he has any chance of retaining the White House. Now, what is not helping his cause is that in many states you're seeing a resurgence of COVID as the sort of restrictions have been eased. We're seeing a spike in cases. Obviously, President Trump is sort of trying to downplay this, but it's really getting quite serious now. And there is sort of conflicting views coming out as well from the administration and the CDC as to the next sort of course of action. Because the way it stands at the moment, there's 39 states have now got increased cases, and many of those have got record cases coming through now. And also as well, it's just been announced this week, the Johnson & Johnson and Eli Lilly have got two vaccines in sort of phase 3 trials. They've now been suspended over safety concerns. Johnson & Johnson was on the back of one of the patients coming up with an adverse illness. Now that's yet to be decided whether that was actually caused by the vaccine, but both those trials have now been put on hold. And what is quite interesting as well, obviously, President Trump, is now tested negative for 2 consecutive tests, but no one's seen the First Lady. She obviously tested positive for COVID the same time as the president, but no one's seen her in public yet. In terms of the markets, they're still doing pretty well out there. Now, coming into the next sort of round of earnings season, this will be very interesting to see how this sort of plays through. Certainly second quarter was pretty poor, but they're expected to be pretty poor. Say in this sort of third quarter now, it'll be interesting to see what the sort of third quarter earnings are, but also as well the guidance going forward. Also, a big announcement coming out of Apple as well, with potentially the latest iPhone on release and sort of dates, etc. That's certainly given the stock a pretty major boost and obviously dragged the other indices through on the back of that. And it will just be interesting to see what comes out. And then just to add to the mix as well, we've still got the ongoing Senate hearings for the Supreme Court Justice. And that's pretty interesting because at present there's around 5.5 million people have already voted early in the US. and potentially if there is a change of a government and the Republicans lose the White House, then obviously, there's quite a bit of angst out there from the Democrats who are saying that actually this nomination shouldn't be going ahead, should be waiting until the election. So really, I think it's going to be a pretty interesting time in the next sort of 2 to 3 weeks. Say earnings coming through, but also as well, obviously, all eyes on the election in the US, and certainly President Trump has got quite a bit of work to do. But if you remember back to 2016, he was behind in the polls there and came out with a victory. Oil still holding steady, around that sort of $39 a barrel, sort of plus or minus a dollar. Now, the UK and Europe is really facing some pretty major issues with this sort of second wave of COVID. The UK government has now reintroduced sort of tiered levels for sort of potential sort of local lockdowns, etc. And that's really getting pretty serious. As in the last 2 weeks of September, cases in the UK went from 100,000 to over 200,000 in a week. It's now come out as well that the UK medical experts advised the government that potentially a sort of a 2-week lockdown for the country was the best sort of circuit breaker to try and get on top of this virus. And obviously that didn't happen. The UK government ignored that, and now potentially they're sort of seeing the consequences of that. Closer to home in Australia, starting to see a relaxation out there. Melbourne and Victoria still not out of the woods yet, although cases and sort of deaths has fallen dramatically. Cases are now down to sort of around the sort of 12 to 15 a day, which is, it's a huge decrease from the sort of 500-600 they were seeing. But potentially their sort of lockdown procedures are going to be in place for another week. But the rest of the states in Australia are sort of starting to see an easing. Certainly New South Wales is sort of back, and not quite back to normal, but certainly performing pretty well. And also as well, obviously, you still got the Trans-Tasman bubble with no quarantine now, with New Zealand visitors going into Australia in certain states. Now you add that to the tax break that is coming in Australia as well, and potentially the Australian economy is not looking in too bad a shape. Likewise here in New Zealand, the New Zealand economy is still pretty robust. Certainly the housing market really has seen nowhere near the sort of price falls that were anticipated when COVID first sort of struck back in March. In fact, recent house sales were sort of near record levels. Prices are on the up, and really there is a reasonably good sort of feel out there with the housing market. Really on the back of sort of reduced sort of supply, increased demand with New Zealanders coming back from overseas, but also as well record low mortgage rates. Now on the back of that, sort of consumer confidence and sort of business confidence is actually starting to just pick up just a little bit. But obviously, as well as we enter the sort of final few days before Election Day on October the 17th, it's still really Labour's to lose. It's looking increasingly unlikely they will be able to govern alone, though. They need some sort of coalition. So it looks like a sort of a Green Labour coalition, because at present New Zealand First look out of the equation because they don't look like they're going to get the 5%. The other big winner really has been ACT. They're looking like potentially sort of 10 or 11 MPs. Argosy have got a green bond in the marketplace, 7-year. Rate hasn't been fixed yet, but it's looking like sort of 1.95 to around 2.15. And if you're interested in that, call us on 0800 867 323. Also looks like a little bit of a capital raising out there for Vital Healthcare as well. Again, if you're interested in discussing what that entails, call us on 0800 867 323. Now, as always, in this low interest rate environment, it is pretty difficult out there if you're looking for income. Bonds and term deposits really probably aren't cutting it on the sort of current interest rate environment. So if you're interested in discussing what is available, call us on 0800 867 323 or go to the website www.bayfinancialpartners.co.nz for lots of interesting articles, and we look forward to speaking to you soon.